Good morning, everyone, and welcome into Rounding the Bases Live, presented by Enterprise Bank and Trust. Hashtag no stopping you. It's Friday, everybody. We made it to Friday, which is awesome, of course, and excited for another episode of Rounding the Bases. A lot going on. I had an off day yesterday, which was really nice to kind of recharge after a doubleheader on Wednesday, and so that was certainly nice for me to be able to do that and get the computer stuff fixed out. I was talking about that yesterday. I'm actually I'm actually going the route of a new computer. It was time. It'll be here later today. So I'm still working off of my daughter's cute little pink MacBook Air. Thank goodness I had that backup. You have to be resilient. You have to be able to handle this type of stuff. I do know that everything else in here, the audio visual provided by KCAV, if you've got audio visual needs of the largest of size or projects, check them out. My buddy Alan Landever over there, constantly having meetings and working with major organizations, designing some really cool stuff. So kcav.com. And of course, I couldn't do this. I say it every single day, the support and partnership of Enterprise Bank and Trust. Hashtag no stopping you. I'm really excited for my guest today because I think I'll be honest to say I never knew a whole lot about the freelance world. I shouldn't say that. I mean, I've worked with freelancers and all that over the years, but really I didn't fully understand the freelance world until I became one. And with my business and the speaking and then all the podcasting stuff and all of that, it is a freelance business, and you never know what's coming in and what's not coming in. Then there's the baseball job, which has always been, since I came to Kansas City, a freelance gig too. But I always knew what the schedule was. I always knew that I had this 150 games or these 160 games as long as I stayed healthy, until this year with the pandemic. And so I have not just a great respect, but I feel like I have a deep understanding of what that life and what that world looks like. It's not for everyone, by the way, but it can be a lot of fun. And so I could see backstage virtually, so to speak, that, as I said, it's not for everyone. I saw the look of my guest here today. I'm happy to welcome into Rounding the Bases Live, Julie Cortes, who is a rock star in the world of freelance. And I know that you can relate to so much of this because you go through it yourself. But first and foremost, how you doing on this Friday?
I'm good. Thanks so much for having me on.
It's great to have you on. And I know that I spoke to the Freelance Exchange. I was trying to remember when, and you were able to at least direct me to somewhere less than 2 years.
Wow.
Like everything blends together. But that was cool because it was a room full of like-minded people, maybe all in different professions, but all with that common bond of being a freelancer, which I think most people wear as a badge of honor, right? I mean, it's definitely it can be a lifestyle. It's certainly different than that 9 to 5 or that steady paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
What is it that you love about the freelance world?
Well, of course, with freelancing comes freedom. You have the freedom to set your own hours and work on whatever you want with whomever you want. You can wear whatever you want, work from wherever you want. There's so much freedom to it. And, to your point where, yeah, today it's a badge of honor, but we have worked hard to get here, quite honestly. When I first started freelancing over 20 years ago, like the term freelance was like, oh, that just means you can't get a job. You're a slacker. And that's not always the case. So many of us really want to freelance as our career. We want to be our own bosses and be in charge of our own career destiny, if you will. And fortunately, over the years, I think we kind of have helped improve that image, in part due to the Freelance Exchange, but also because, like, freelancing is the go-to lifestyle right now. Everybody wants to do it. Everybody has this solopreneur spirit, if you will. And so we've kind of gotten rid of that negative image. And we are wearing a badge of honor today. And we're very fortunate for that.
It's such an interesting way of life too, because, and I don't see myself on the same level as someone like you, because I still always had that baseball basket, so to speak. So at least the last 12 years. I mean, when I came to Kansas City in 2008, I came from a salary job. the allure to taking this job, first and foremost, was a lot more responsibility and airtime. And my wife had grown up here in the Kansas City area, so we had, and our niece and nephew were here, so we had an incredible familiarity with where we were going. But the other side to it was that I was going to have 6 months off to go do whatever I wanted. And, I wish I had met more like-minded people like you, because my mind was only on, well, what other sports can I go and find, without really understanding that there's so much out there outside of that world that I was in, and just an amazing creativity that really could feed anyone's skill set if they want to go out there and pursue it. And I guess that's the freedom that you're talking about.
Yeah, and like you said, it really, it's not for everybody, but that doesn't mean you can't change that mindset. When I first started freelancing, again, that's been over 20 years, but like many people in the advertising industry, I lost my job. So many of us end up out on our own, whether by choice or by default. Think of all the graphic designers and photographers and illustrators and writers that who work for themselves. Most likely there's a reason why, so we end up out on our own, either by choice or by default. And quite honestly, most of us went to school to learn our craft. We didn't take business classes, they weren't required. We didn't think we would ever need them. And then lo and behold, bam, here we are, having to run our own business. So if you change your mindset that this is an opportunity and it's not a bad thing, if you go out and learn those things that you need to learn in order to be able to run a business, you can succeed. You just have to put your mind to it and really make an effort of it. Some people, they're really good at what they do. I know some of the top designers in town, top illustrators in town, and they are fantastic. But can they run a business? Can they sell themselves? Can they go find work? No. And they end up hanging up their hats before long. And it's really unfortunate, because the training does exist. The training is out there. Communities are out there, to help and support these individuals make it on their own.
There's so much to it if you're going to go and do this, that it's not just having that skill, right? That's what I've learned too, is where's your marketing coming from? In my world, how much of, are you writing? How much are you designing? On and on. And it's never ending. That can be overwhelming to a lot of people, but there's also then the element of collaboration and the community, one that you have really helped build here in Kansas City. But you said something to me too about it being, I think you said something along the lines of it being normal, or how things are nowadays. And that's changed in the last 5 months, because, and it already was. Look, how many times have we heard people say, oh, this generation, they don't want to come into work at the same time, and they don't want to do this, that. Like they're just as talented as the last generation, but things shift. It just does. And when we sit there and we complain about this generation, we start probably sounding like our parents and our grandparents. And I guess, that's the natural evolution of life. But I think it's fascinating that we're already going a route of, wait a minute, do you need to punch a clock? Do you need to come in at this time? Could you work from home? And then the pandemic hit when you had to work from home. So how has that affected the freelance world and lifestyle? Are we going to start seeing a lot more people doing what you did 20 years ago?
That's a really good question. I think from the corporate side of things, larger companies are seeing, hey, wait, our employees are doing just fine working from home. Now, whether it's the preferred method or not, we really don't have a choice at this point, but at least they can figure out, hey, we don't have to have all of that overhead. That's not the issue. Some people just need to get out of the house, and I totally understand that. For us freelancers, we've been doing this all along. So, all of a sudden the whole work from home thing is not a novel concept. We've been able to adapt to that over time. I remember seeing online, my friends who worked at the ad agencies and the corporations, and, they would be posting online, oh, hashtag work from home. And they'd all be laughing. Oh, I didn't do my hair and makeup today, or I'm wearing yoga pants, or hee, don't tell anybody, it's below the waist on my Zoom call. And I just laugh because they think it's such a novel concept. And those of us who've worked from home, for all these years, we've known these secrets. We've known, what you can get away with and what you can't. Although, hey, if you're listening, I will give you a tip. Like, actually get dressed for work because the more you're in lounge clothes, the less productive you'll be. And it's just a whole mindset thing. It's a whole psychology thing. But that's my little tip for you today. If that helps at all, I don't know, but try it. But yeah, I do think I think more and more people are going to be freelancing. I think corporations are going to allow more remote work to happen, and agencies as well. And I don't think the work from home thing is going to be so novel as it once was.
I think it's completely fascinating because I've seen, even in my industry, the television industry, the acceptance of, hey, we can do this from home. We have to do this from home.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the shot doesn't look quite as good. Maybe it's not quite as crisp. Maybe the background isn't as good. Occasionally a dog or a kid comes into the room, and guess what? Everybody was okay.
Yeah.
Like the world didn't come to an end here. It was okay. And so I'm really interested. So for instance, and I think this is really, really interesting. One of the guys on our crew who does the simplest way to put it is when you see the instant replays or the flashbacks and the little video packages, that's the stuff that he is doing on the fly live every single moment. He's out of here in Kansas City. I've worked with him for 12 years, and he travels with us. He's one of the 7 or 8 guys in the truck that travel with us. We pick up the rest on the road. And he just told me, and he does a lot of other, once Royals are over, NFL and things like that. And he texted me yesterday and he said, I'm doing the CBS package or whatever it was for NFL, and they're setting me up with a station, and I'm doing everything from home. And so now suddenly he is going to be editing live stuff for the NFL broadcasts from his house. Unthinkable before.
Uh-huh.
So I think that that's really not all that different than others. A quick couple of messages that have come in. Kiana, freelance plus freedom equals fire. Yes. And I've got to give a big thanks to Becky for helping connect us. She's connected me with some amazing other guests. Keep them coming, Becky. Freelancing and solopreneurs are increasingly more chosen career paths today. Becky chimed in, by the way, yesterday, which I appreciated with the suggestion for the computer and the connection. But I said at the top of the show, it was time. It was sort of like, I think I can go get somebody to help me with this, but we're probably at the last legs anyway. Let's start fresh. So anyway, I'm very, very grateful for Becky for helping us make the connection. But you touched on something that was really interesting to me, because with that freedom still comes a lot of responsibility. And I'm not saying people are out there, just all happy and idealistic. Oh, I want to try this out. I can set my own.
Mm-hmm.
There's a beauty to that freedom. At the same time, there are a lot of potential pitfalls, and there's a lot of oftentimes not a safety net that so many people have with the comfort of that regular. Now, maybe that's worth it, but what are the challenges of navigating that? You have navigated the ups and downs and the extreme, what can be the extreme highs and lows of the freelance world for many, many years. Yeah. And that's, that could be a bit of a roller coaster ride if you're not used to it. So what are some of your strategies or what you've learned over the years for surviving that?
Sure. Well, I tell my coaching clients, especially if they're first starting out, there is no shame in going to get a part-time job just so you have some sort of steady, reliable income coming in the door. That's totally okay. The other thing I really stress upon people is to don't just focus on one service or product. Try and diversify your income as much as possible. If you can create passive income, that's even better. Whether you're selling products on your website or, whatever the case may be, there are ways around it. And it is tough. You've got to prepare, but it's not even, oh, there's a pandemic coming up. Like, nobody knows that's happening, right? You can't really prepare for that, but they always say save for a rainy day, right? And especially in the world of freelancing, where we have what's called episodic income, where you don't necessarily know where your next paycheck is coming from or when it's coming in. And so you do have to have that safety net. You do have to save your money for those times, and maybe it's one of those things where My dad taught me this early on, but you save a third of your paycheck, everything that comes in, you put it into savings. And so, when times are really good, that's awesome. You're building that up. And then when times are bad, you can totally rely on that money to pay your bills and get through the tough times. But you just constantly have to be working on your business. And so often we see people forget about that. They get so busy and so caught up in their client work, they forget to keep promoting themselves and keep putting themselves out there and keep networking. And it's so essential, because you may be super busy right now, but 6 months down the road, you may have nothing. And you didn't do your homework in advance, to prepare for that time. So, I always encourage people to take an hour out of your day, work on self-promotion, do something to prepare for the future. And that way you'll have some sort of safety net to carry you forward.
And it's habit forming too. I mean, when you talk about spend an hour or whatever, and I'm terrible with this because I know that I should be spending, just 15 to 30 minutes every day prospecting, and the way I prospect might be different than others. I would, for me, call it more relationship building, but taking that time and circling back and doing all those little things that are part of your own infrastructure, right? And so even for me, it was like when the pandemic went down, I had the double whammy because, and I've said this before, and I don't say it in any way looking for sympathy. I say it really more with the thought of empathy, that what I went through, I think a lot of people say, oh, well, he's just some guy that's on TV that, oh, he'll be fine, and not that anybody needs to know how I'm paid, but many of us, myself included, are paid by the game. Mm-hmm. And so, we work for 6 months, suddenly 4 months disappears. And that's not anything that I'd ever expected before. So I would say I wasn't really planning for the rainy day. I always planned for, what if I'm sick for a couple of weeks? What if I, miss 2 weeks, which is really like the equivalent of a month when you're doing a year's worth. But right. I was in the same boat as everybody else. So suddenly the speaking, and this, you speak too, the speaking dried up initially. None of us quite knew how to do it virtually. And quite frankly, most companies weren't looking for speakers at that point. They were just trying to get their people home. Right. So it was the double whammy of both of these businesses going away at once. But for me, it was everything you just talked about with what I would call the infrastructure. It was focused on that then. Okay, if I can't make money today, what can I do that might pay off down the road? Easier said than done when, you got to put food on the table and all of that. But I think from a freelance standpoint, there's something you can do every single day to help yourself. Yes. And you have the ability to put that in your schedule if you want to. And it's what my guest yesterday is in finance and former NFL player, and he talked about just little gains of inches every single day. Mm-hmm. That's also part of that freedom too, though, isn't it? To have the control and ability to work on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think now is as good a time as any. Mm-hmm. So many people have been given the gift of time right now, whether you don't have commute anymore, or, maybe you don't have a lot of work coming in, you have the gift of time. And again, it's a mindset shift. Instead of, being really down about it, and maybe, going and sitting in front of the TV, like, do something about it, set office hours for yourself, make sure you are in your office working on your business, if not in your business, and really take advantage of that time. Go out and, improve your skills. Like you said, take a class online, watch a webinar, listen to podcasts, get coaching, whatever it is that you can do to strengthen yourself, again, to prepare yourself for tomorrow. You build a better future by planning today. And I get it. I understand the whole mental health part of this and how people are struggling, and depression definitely takes a toll. I totally understand that. And I'm not downplaying that whatsoever. However, I think if you shift your focus, it might be a little easier to get by. And instead of focusing on the negative of, oh, I don't have any money coming in the door, maybe you spin that a little bit. Okay, I don't have money, but I do have time. And what can I do with that time to ensure I have money later on down the road?
The best piece of advice I got came from an executive who said to me, and for some reason in March, he said, just survive, tread water and survive, and just see if you could survive till July. I don't think at the time he knew that baseball would come back in the latter part of July, But that sort of became my target. Let's see what's it going to take to get to July, and survival then ends up meeting maybe it is taking that extra job, or if it has to be a loan, or it has to be there are so many things, deferring payment on mortgage or whatever it is. Like, just do what you have to do to get there,
Right.
and if that means you have less time because that second job is taking you away from all that infrastructure that we're talking about, that's fine. But unless it is a 24/7 job, you still have the ability to do that. And even if that other job doesn't make you happy or like that, this is just jumping in the deep end and treading and doing whatever you have to do to stay afloat.
Yep.
So there's no shame in that. I mean, that's just, to me, if anything, that's the badge of honor
Yes.
that, hey, I could do this.
Mm-hmm.
Am I totally happy right now? Is this what I want? No. But like, I'm sitting here right now in August starting to get a lot of interest, and I'm getting a lot of phone calls in the last few weeks. And I think it's part things are opening up in terms of comfort level, even if we may or may not go backwards here soon, but there's a comfort level now with companies saying, okay, we've got everybody home, we're trying to move on, what's next? And I think we're all seeing that. We keep hearing the new norm or the next norm. I think that's what's going on, but a lot of it is a byproduct of what you did in March, in April, and May. It's no different than working out or dieting or whatever it is. You put in that work, and it happens. Becky also threw out there about you being the founder of the Freelance Exchange, and I want to talk about that and then some of your pivots too, because I had the honor of speaking to your group. I mentioned that before, to the Freelance Exchange. It was really cool because just everybody in the room, and I think I met most, not everybody. It was a nice intimate setting, and everybody had a different story, but yet there was this commonality between everybody. And so I've got to think, and I want you to talk a little bit about the Freelance Exchange, that this is and when you created it, it was even a different world than now, a very safe place for everyone to kind of understand each other and to have walked in each other's shoes.
Yeah, I started the Freelance Exchange back in 2003. I had been freelancing for about 5 years on my own. And, I started looking around at my fellow freelancers, and I realized we all were dealing with the same issues. Like I mentioned before, so many of us had gone to school to learn our craft, and nobody really knew how to run a business. And I was like, you know what? Why don't we just get together and figure this out? And I had been part of other professional organizations, but they weren't really providing that sort of programming at all. There wasn't anything that was niche specific. There wasn't anything that like celebrated the solopreneur or even had us come together for a company holiday party at the end of the year. And so I started the organization with the idea of this is going to be continuing education. This is going to be us getting together, bringing in the experts, whether it's an accountant or an attorney or what have you, to come in and really share with us the things that we need to know in order to be successful in our businesses. And also, it was designed to be a community where we could rely on one another for mentorship, where we could ask questions in that safe space, as you suggested, where, no question is a stupid question, quite honestly. And everybody can feel safe to ask questions like, oh, what do you do about, pricing? How do you set your rates? What do you do when a client doesn't pay? What do you do with a difficult client? Have you ever worked with this difficult client? Should I steer clear? All of those questions. And so we built the organization to provide continuing education. And then, just by default, organically over the years, it has grown into this beautiful community of advertising and marketing freelancers. And, we have social opportunities, we have networking opportunities, promotional opportunities. It's just it's grown beyond, what I had initially envisioned for it, which is great. I absolutely love where it has gone. And I am inherently grateful for all the volunteers over the years, who has helped make this what it is. And, yes, we are here for the freelancers. Yes, we are here to help them become savvier businessmen and women. Yet on the other hand, we also have another target audience, and that is the people who are looking for freelance talent. So area companies, area ad agencies, anybody who needs a freelance designer or writer or photographer or what have you, now they can go to this resource online at our website. It's kcfreelanceexchange.com, and they can search for free and easily find the talent that they're looking for. Our members have their bios up there, they have their portfolio samples. And it's just something that we offer to give back to the community. It's just something that we wanted to put out there to make it easy for people to find us.
All right. So really cool, because that works both ways then too. Might be a phenomenal solution for anyone looking for help in whatever that project or whatever that field is. Need a graphic designer. There's somebody there, or more than one person there. I think a copywriter, and yes, hello. Say hi to Julie, and there are others too. And so I know that Byron Ginsberg was the one that connected me with the group. It was actually his doing of getting me there, and so it was a good, warm, like-minded thinking group. And like-minded just meaning that you guys all, I called it a safe space. I think it's probably better to call it a community, like you did, but safe in just the sense of not having to explain all of how you go about what you do, right? I mean, it's like you when you talk about the whole thing about, hey, don't forget to get dressed. That sounds, equal parts silly and equal part, but yet that's what everybody went through during this pandemic. And for those of you that have lived that life forever, you're just like, I mean, duh, this is the way it works, right? But so many people had never done that before, and so they were suddenly living a piece of your life.
Right.
Amidst all of that, you have involvement with the Kansas City Art Institute. Tell me about that.
I do. So, because I'm the founder of the Freelance Exchange, throughout the years, I had been going around to different colleges, getting asked to come in and give like a 1-hour presentation on freelancing. Because I guess when you're the founder of something, you become the go-to expert on things, which is fine. I loved it. And it finally dawned on me a few years ago, and I was like, I am just scratching the surface. I'm giving a 1-hour presentation on freelancing. Like, this needs to be taught in schools. This totally needs to be taught in schools. And long story short, I ended up pitching my idea to the world-renowned Kansas City Art Institute. Who knew it was world-renowned, in our own backyard? And I said, hey, what do you guys think about this? And they're like, yes, you're in. And okay, well, I've never taught before. I have no background in education. They're like, we don't care. You know what you're doing. Okay. So I'm starting my 5th year here in January. Will be my 5th year teaching. The class that I created is Freelancing 101. And essentially, it's teaching these young artists how to run a business. And it's both commercial artists and fine artists. So not just those who work in advertising and marketing, but also the people who do, the hands-on stuff, with painting and sculpture and fiber and stuff that's way over my head. But I've had a blast learning all about it. And they, too, need to learn how to run their own businesses. So it's been such a joy getting in there. And it was the very first business class that was offered at the Art Institute. And you have to realize that I'm not just teaching a business class, I'm teaching business to artists. And that's a whole nother skill in and of itself, right? Because we have a different part of our brain working. But I've been able to make it work. And then the pandemic hit. And I normally don't teach in the fall, but all of a sudden I got this opportunity presented to me where a professor who had been there for many, many years and who had even brought me in to speak to her class decided she didn't want to teach any longer, or at least through the pandemic, which I totally understand. She's a little bit older, definitely doesn't want to teach in person. And then, of course, isn't so tech savvy, to be able to do the Zoom calls or classrooms. So she asked me to jump in and take over her class. So here in a week or so, I'm going to be jumping in and teaching this professional practice class, is what it's called, in the illustration department, getting the students ready for the real world. Again, it's a business class. It's not hands-on art like many of the classes, so it easily can go online. But, teaching the students, how to put together a resume, how to interview, what about an elevator speech and networking, and how to present yourself on social media. Again, all of these integral pieces that typically weren't taught in the past. Fortunately, I have 20 some odd years of experience of doing this. So, I was up for the challenge and ready to go online here in a week or so and start that class off as well.
It's awesome. And it's so important too. Like, these are not I don't think that they're the most difficult skills in the world, but they are such a foreign concept if you've never been taught them before.
Right.
And so to me, they're common sense. But I think back to, from a TV standpoint, like one of the things that I like to tell people is that yes, I get to talk about baseball. Yes, it's the most amazing job. Yes, it's everything you think it is. But the bulk of what I do is relationship building. The bulk of what I'm doing is building trust and getting to know these guys, and which, by the way, is an extreme challenge right now when we're not face to face. And so, I personally am living with what I have spoken to so many groups about in terms of communication and connectivity and how to do that via Zoom. And so there's, first off, there's always a way. Maybe you have to get a little bit creative, but I'm reminded, and I know it served me well with my speaking and with my business, that I'm a networker. I had a lot of those entrepreneurial skills from the reporting side, but you know what? Nobody ever taught them to me. So it took me years to figure it out because they never taught it in the class back then. We could teach you how to be a journalist. We could teach you how to write, but nobody told me how to build sources or relationships. And so when you are that focused on being an artist, you've hopefully perfected that craft or put so much into it. Oh, by the way, where's the business side of it? Right.
Right.
And so it's so obvious if you have those skills or have been taught those skills, or someone shared them with you.
Mm-hmm.
But this isn't something you can Google,
Right.
which is
I
the
mean,
way we
you
like to do
could.
everything.
You
Yeah.
could, but who knows
Yes.
what you're going to find out there? Yeah, it's so much better to have somebody who's been in the trenches themselves. And
Yeah.
the funny thing that I found is once I started teaching this class, the freelancing class at the Art Institute, was so many of my professional peers, from the freelance exchange and otherwise, were coming up to me and they were like, "Hey, can I take your class?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, but you have to enroll and you have to go back to school and pay for it." And they didn't want to do that. And so then I was like, "Hey, Cortes, light bulb moment. Why don't you open up a coaching arm to your business and give the same lessons, but on a more, adult professional level and make some money out of it?" "Oh yeah, great idea." So, that's been going really well. And, it was an obvious choice for me because people had been coming to me over the years. People had been saying, "Hey, can I buy you a cup of coffee and pick your brain?" So much over the years. So it was just a natural path for me to just, add that on to my service offerings for my business. But what a great time to do it, quite
Mm-hmm.
honestly. We were talking before the show that, gosh, the pandemic hit. And of course, companies don't want to spend advertising dollars right now. And so, even though that's the last thing they should be doing. But, so many of us in the advertising and marketing world, we have seen that part of our business like take a hit. My copywriting business definitely took a hit. It's starting to grow a little bit back right now, but fortunately, I had the coaching and the teaching and the speaking. Also, I had diversified my income, and I had that already set up. So I had some sort of safety net, to get me through the tough times. And again, I can't stress that enough, to always have some different outlets, to make sure you've got some finances coming in.
Mm-hmm. And it's, there's never been a more necessary time for all of these skills. And look, if for anyone, I would say, and then I want to ask you a couple final questions here. I mean, I would say if you didn't save, if you weren't ready for this super, super long rainy day, which isn't going away tomorrow, then start working on it now. It's never too late. And so it's like I said before, survive, but I can't stress it enough. The work you put in today, if it's good work, if it's the right work, will pay off tomorrow, next month, next year, whatever. And then you'll wake up one day and you're like, wow, I got a hot streak going right now. Well, you have a hot streak because you allowed yourself to have a hot streak. I
Right.
can't tell you how many times I talked to my closest friend in Chicago, and he's a freelancer and he owns a production company. I mean, it's his own company. He's an editor and a video editor. And it's like, hey, how's it going? We talk, how's it going? I can't talk. I'm so busy right now. How's it going? Just everything's so cold right now. And it's like the same pick me up speech that I give him and he gives me, that just goes in circles. You just have to hear it though. It's not anything you haven't heard before. It just goes in cycles. So what I would like to know with your expertise, and you have been an expert on this topic for many, many years. There are a lot of people out there right now, might be watching us live or later on, that are saying, you know what, I'm ready to make the pivot, or I'm trying to navigate the way. What are some of the simple starting points for someone that wants to become a freelancer?
Well, first of all, I would say if you have lost your job and you're still trying to look for a job, but you're kind of contemplating freelancing at the same time, first off, I'd say make a decision. Go one way or another and go all in, because otherwise, your time, your energy, and your focus is all going to be split. So, that said, if you do choose the freelancing route, just immerse yourself in knowledge. Get out there and figure out everything it is that you need to know, because quite often, honestly, I see people who don't succeed simply because they don't know what they don't know. Right? You may think you know it all, but you don't. I'm still learning, and I've been doing this for 20 some odd years.
Mm-hmm.
And things are constantly changing too, so you take a class on bookkeeping, or you take a social media class, best practices, or even, how to do social media ads, which not everybody really knows about,
Mm-hmm.
but you really have to embrace knowledge and continuing education, and constantly be working on that. I would say also find a mentor, find somebody who can help you, somebody who's been in your shoes before, who can guide you along the way. And, especially when it comes to pricing, that is probably the biggest question
Oh,
right? Julie, I don't know how to price my services. Do I do it by the hour, by the project, by the day? And quite honestly, my answer is I don't know. And I wish I had an answer. I wish there was one go-to method. And you'll see people will say, oh, there's these online calculators you can use, or these worksheets that you can use where you put in your cost of living, your expenses, and this is what you have to make. Okay, well, that's great. That's a great starting off point. However, what it doesn't take into account is what's your talent level like? Are you in demand or not? What's your cost of living? Are you here in Kansas City, or are you in San Francisco, where the cost of living is way more? All of these things are factors. So that's why I always say, sure, you can start with those, but then go talk to people and figure out what they are charging. And then, find your place in the world. Are you as good as them, or are you not? Are you in demand, as much in demand as they are, or are you not? And then figure out your pricing from there. And that's probably the best tip that I can give when it comes to that.
I will tell you what, the pricing thing, I think, is more of a hang up than any other element to this. It was for me for a lot of years, and then was again during the pandemic.
Sure.
Because one, until you're comfortable with it, it can be really awkward to sell yourself and understand what your worth is or your services are worth. And so there's almost this, I know so many people go through this. Initially, there's this uncomfortable, almost guilty, wait, can I ask for that? And it's just awkward. And it's like, I don't know, it could be like back when we were growing up and, being a teenage kid asking, guy or girl to the dance or something like that. And you're like, oh my gosh, what are they going to say? What are they going to say? And it's just awkward. It's uncomfortable. It's not a conversation that anyone loves.
Right.
And what I found, I wasn't planning on going here, but I'm curious your take on it too, because I loved what you said that I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can't call somebody and say, what should I charge for this speech or this service? They may have an answer.
Mm-hmm.
It may not be right. And their answer may be different than the next 10 people too. And so to me, and I'm curious your take, I think you figure it out by trial and error over time.
Yeah.
And if the goal is to try to have some set fees, I don't think they have to be set from day one. And I'm talking about this like I'm an expert, but I've spent the last 3 years going from really scared of this conversation and really uncertain to getting a feel for, in Kansas City, which might be different elsewhere, what companies were willing to pay.
Right.
And then if they were willing to pay less, was that something I could still do for less services? Or maybe it's just not the right fit. And you get enough yeses and nos, you start to get a feel for, if it's not exact, maybe your fee range is here, and suddenly it starts to come closer to here, and it's a little bit easier to play in this world than
Yeah.
that world.
Yeah, and I see people who lose their jobs at these big corporations or agencies, and then they get out on their own, and they may have 20 years experience, but they are so intimidated by just starting freelancing that they don't think that they can charge their worth. And so I try and coach them through that. Yes, your work has value, and yes, you can command these kind of rates. But you're right, it's a trial and error kind of thing. I went to a conference last year, this big national freelance conference, and I still remember to this day what this lady said. And it was basically, if you're not getting any pushback on your rates, it's time to raise them.
Mm-hmm.
I want to repeat that. If you're not getting any pushback on your rates, it's time to raise them. Now, if you get pushback every once in a while, you're probably in the same in a good spot. If it's all the time, then you need to lower your rates. And it's just this concept of getting comfortable of talking about money. And what I have found is when people ask me what I charge, you try and flip the narrative and instead ask, well, what's in your budget? And then go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, which is the best way to go about it, unless they decide they want to play a game of chicken.
Right.
Well, we haven't thought about that yet, but it's sort of like this whole, like, who wants to go first?
Yep.
But I think that you can make it a warm conversation.
Oh, sure.
Sometimes what I'll do, I mean, I can't believe that I'm sitting here giving advice on this when it was so uncomfortable to me, but I think that I'm at least proof that you can get more used to this. Is, hey, let's have this uncomfortable talk about money now, because we got to get there at some point. Because you know what, it tends to be the last item on whatever agenda you're talking about.
Right.
It might not have been placed last on the list, but it keeps getting pushed back and pushed back because everybody's trying to avoid the inevitable. You got to talk about it at some point. So I'll just say, hey, this is never fun, but doesn't need to be a painful thing.
Mm-hmm.
I would love it if you wanted to pay me $1 million. If you've got that, great. But otherwise, hey, what were you thinking? What was in your budget? Or here's another one too. Where were you at? What were you thinking?
Mm-hmm.
And see where they go with it. They may throw it back to you too. But I also think too, Julie, that when you have started to do enough other events or services or whatever you're providing, you then at least can give them some framework. This is what I've been charging, or
Right.
This is what others are paying. What did you have in mind, or something like that? And shoot, this could be a whole podcast episode, because I actually think it's really fascinating, not just strategy, but psychology to it. And on both sides, it really is. And so, I had one recently, I did a speech yesterday, and we never got to the money discussion because it was a friend, and it was someone that I had the comfort level and trust with, of knowing that it would work itself out. But at some point, and so I just sent him a text and I said, hey, this is always a weird conversation with friends, but what did you have in mind for this event? Well, would this be okay? And I came back then and I threw like an extra $100,000 on what he said. I said, I really thought I was worth $100,000, whatever it was, dollars, but yes, this is great. Just to make that joke too, to lighten the moment a little bit. I have yet to have anybody say, sure, 100,000, sure, $1 million. But you know what? At the minimum, you can get a chuckle out of it. And I think that at least de-escalates what can be a little bit of a nerve-wracking situation. So, go on. Sorry.
Oh, no, you're absolutely right. Yeah, if you phrase it like that and say, hey, listen, I know this is uncomfortable, but let's get it out of the way. If you throw some jokes into it, I think that's so much better. And I was going to say, too, that I have found by flipping the narrative and asking them the question instead, well, what did you have in the budget? Oftentimes they have way more budget in than what I was even thinking of charging. So if I ask that question, then I know that I can end up charging more than what I was originally planning. And both parties are still happy, and it's still a win-win.
And sometimes you just have to listen for little tells, because sometimes it's, well, another good one is, what have you spent on something like this in the past? Right. And because they may not say budget, but they're willing to go with what's happened in the past. So this doesn't need to be a gotcha type of game. It's really, ultimately, you're just trying to work with someone and you're trying to find a comfort level on both sides. And so it doesn't have to be hey, show me your cards here. It doesn't need to be looked at like that.
Yeah.
And I think that we all defensively can go that route, but there's nothing wrong with exchanging that information and trying to you're ultimately trying to get to a place where you can work together. And so I think that makes a lot of sense. Last question. You talked about the Art Institute, talked about teaching, your coaching. So as is the true life of a rock star freelancer, you're doing a lot, and some days are busier than others. Where do you see the next pivots for you coming, without knowing what the world looks like, but also understanding that this fall potentially could be rough?
It definitely could be rough, and because I just got into the coaching and speaking game on a professional level, I'm still growing that side of the business. And so what I'm currently working on behind the scenes is coming up with products that I can sell on my website, and courses that I can give to my professional peers, not at the Art Institute, but to potential coaching clients or anybody else who needs that kind of training. And that's where I'm heading. Again, just different ways to diversify the income, getting people the tools that they need to succeed, and all in all, helping improve the image of the term freelance and helping people be successful.
So you can find more about Julie at juliecortes.com. The Freelance Exchange. What was the website on the Freelance Exchange again?
kcfreelanceexchange.com.
kcfreelanceexchange.com. But check out, I mean, anything that you want to know about Freelance Exchange or anything related to Julie, go to juliecortes.com and you will definitely see all of that. Fascinating discussion today, Julie. One that I think resonated or will resonate with a lot of people. It certainly does me, and more so than ever right now. So I appreciate you spending the time. It was awesome, and have a great weekend. And I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thanks so much for having me on. Appreciate it.
All right, hang tight for 1 second. Really fun to be able to visit with Julie. Another week in the books, 110 episodes down, survived the computer crash and all the craziness of that. You know what? The show, and I'm not just talking about podcasts, the show always goes on. It does, no matter what you do in life. And so you got to jump up and take care of that. Thanks to KCAV, Kansas City Audio Visual. If you've got needs of the largest size or small for that matter, check them out at kcav.com. And you can certainly look at my website, any information you want, if I can help you in any way. I don't say this a whole lot on here, but any events, speaking, or whatever it might be, looking for that pick me up right now. I'm doing a lot of talk about culture, new norms, next norms, and all of that. Leadership, certainly reach out to me, and I would look forward to hearing from you. Most importantly, I hope everyone has a great weekend. Happy Friday, and see you back here on Monday. Thanks for watching Rounding the Bases Live, presented by my good friends at Enterprise Bank and Trust. #No stopping you. Stay safe, everyone.